Before you dive into this scary story, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like it. It helps us create new scary stories. In the foggy twilight of an autumn evening, a group of border guards, whose lives were usually filled with routine checks, patrolling the border, and handling minor incidents, found themselves caught in a tangled web of mystical events. The forest that separated the two countries was always shrouded in mystery, and even the most experienced border officers sensed that something unfathomable lurked deep within its bounds. It was here, under the starry sky, where every shadow seemed alive, that the story began, a story that would forever change the fate of these men and women. The shift commander, Major Alexander Romanov, was a man of iron composure and a cool mind. But on that ominous evening, he felt an unusual sense of unease, as if an unseen hand was trying to grab his throat, making his heart pound erratically. He gathered his subordinates on a small clearing, explaining that a sudden meeting was necessary. All voices fell silent, and the air grew heavy with tension. Each one of them understood that the forest held secrets not meant for ordinary mortals. If you think that everything beyond our checkpoints follows the rules of ordinary logic, Romanov said, then think again. Tonight, we will encounter something you have never seen before. Stay alert, and do not let your guard down. His words, spoken in a cold and determined voice, gripped every listener. At that very moment, as the last ray of the setting sun disappeared, the boundary between the ordinary world and the realm of mysteries began to blur. As the border guards ventured deeper into the forest, they noticed that the familiar path became increasingly unrecognizable, and the trees around them seemed to watch their every move. The faint light of the moon filtered through the dense branches, casting ominous shadows upon the ground. At first, they assumed it was merely the play of light and wind, but soon they began to notice strange marks carved into the tree bark. What initially appeared as random scratches now resembled mysterious symbols, runes left by someone who knew of the existence of parallel worlds. One of the guards, the young and still inexperienced Ivan Sokolov, approached one such tree. He observed that the symbols resembled ancient runes, and his mind flashed back to warnings he had once heard from his grandfather. His grandfather used to tell him stories of the ancient forest spirits, and how they could meddle in human affairs if their rest was disturbed. A chill ran down Sokolov's spine, and he quickly stepped back, as if knowing that his actions might awaken something that had long lain dormant in the forest. At that same moment, Senior Officer Alexei Gromov, while observing these peculiarities, felt his mind drift into fragments of ancient legends about forest spirits and curses. He noticed that the forest around them began to change its appearance. The trees seemed to thicken and form a labyrinth with no apparent escape. His heart pounded with dread, yet duty compelled him to continue forward, despite the ominous signs of nature. Deep within the forest, something unimaginable awaited them. The soft rustle of leaves suddenly turned into a rhythmic thumping, resembling the sound of footsteps, and before long, the sounds grew ever closer. The guards halted, holding their breath, as from the shadows of the trees slowly emerged a figure. It resembled a human, yet its limbs were unnaturally elongated, and its eyes glowed with a cold blue light. The figure appeared suspended between worlds, its gaze penetrating each person and evoking a profound sense of despair. "Who are you?" Romanov asked, striving to maintain his composure, though an awkward tremor betrayed his voice. But the answer did not come from the figure. It came from deep within the forest, echoing over the clearing. "You have violated the border, and now you must pay for your insolence." The words resonated as if spoken by the forest itself, and each syllable made the blood in their veins freeze. The following hours became a true test of the guards' endurance and courage. The forest around them seemed to come alive, filled with ghostly apparitions and eerie sounds. Every path led them further away from the familiar, plunging them into an atmosphere of inexplicable magic and ancient rituals. Romanov ordered them to keep formation and not to retreat, but in each soldier's eyes was a fear of the unknown. One night, when the sky was streaked with the purple hues of the northern lights, they discovered an abandoned hut standing at the forest's edge. The hut looked as if it had once been inhabited by people, but now it was almost entirely consumed by moss and lichen. Hanging on its door was an old lock, covered in runes similar to those they had seen on the trees. Inside, an unnatural silence prevailed, broken only by the creaking of old wooden planks underfoot. Believing that this shelter might hold answers to the strange phenomena, the border guards stepped inside. The hut's room was furnished with antique furniture, and on a table lay a faded leather-bound book, adorned with intricate patterns, reminiscent of interwoven branches. Gromov, who had always been fond of literature and myths, cautiously opened the book and began to study its contents. The text recounted tales of people who had tried to cross the threshold between worlds, and described how the forest guarding the border punished those who dared disturb its peace. Each page of the book radiated an ancient energy, as if the words themselves were coming to life, telling of the grim fates of their predecessors. The book spoke of a ritual capable of opening a portal to another realm, a realm where the spirits of ancestors and demons of oblivion dwelled. According to the legends, this ritual was performed on a special night, when darkness and light merged into one, and it was precisely on such nights that the boundary between worlds became exceptionally thin. The guards began to realize that their patrolling of this border was not mere chance. Someone or something had directed them here so that they might witness, or perhaps even take part in, this ancient rite. Major Romanov read aloud one of the pages, his voice trembling with awe as it echoed through the empty room. "Be cautious, for the forest knows your soul, and whoever dares to step beyond the threshold may forever lose their connection to reality." Those words struck a chord deep within each of them. At that very moment, a strange noise sounded outside the hut, as if footsteps were creeping up to the door, and everyone froze, sensing the approach of an unknown peril. At dawn the following morning, barely as light broke through, the guards decided to continue their journey, in hopes of finding the source of the strange phenomena. The hut was left behind, a silent witness to the events of the previous night, while the forest around them grew ever more foreboding. The sun tried to break through the thick clouds, but its rays appeared pale and cold, as if coming from another world. The group moved along a narrow trail, when suddenly their eyes were drawn to the glimmer of something unusual, shimmering between the trees. It was an amulet, hanging from a branch, crafted from ancient metal, and decorated with symbols they had already seen on the hut and on the trees. Gromov carefully picked up the amulet and examined it, feeling an unknown energy pulsating from within. "This amulet is the key to our mystery," he whispered, as if listening to the voices of forebears. "We must understand what it means." The border guards split into two groups. One continued along the trail, while the other halted to study the discovered signs and ritual items. Even Sokolov, still shaken by the previous events, could not take his eyes off the amulet, feeling that within it lay the fate of their entire shift. His thoughts intermingled with ancient legends of cursed lands and the mysterious promises of the forest. Soon, they reached a small clearing where rune-like symbols were etched into the stones. Here, time itself seemed to stand still. Against the backdrop of this inexplicable mysticism, a picture began to form. The forest was trying to tell them something, to impart ancient wisdom and warn of impending danger. Gromov recalled the words from the book and realized that the ritual described in the ancient records might already be in progress. Perhaps someone had deliberately used the border between worlds as a portal, and now long-forgotten forces were beginning to awaken. A sense of impending threat gripped them all. With every step, the forest thickened, and the shadows grew ever more sinister. That mysterious voice they had heard during the night resounded once again, but this time it seemed closer. The time has come. The boundary blurs. You can no longer turn back. The words echoed across the clearing, momentarily robbing the guards of the ability to think clearly. They had to steel themselves to face the approaching evil, an evil that seemed poised to engulf their souls and carry them away into the abyss of ancient curses. What followed happened in a whirlwind. The forest around them seemed to come alive, as if it were a living entity governed by an unseen will. The trees creaked and whispered, and the very ground beneath their feet appeared to pulsate in rhythm with their hearts. The border, which until now had been nothing more than a line on a map, had acquired a new, sinister meaning. It was not only a territorial demarcation, but also a spiritual threshold, a passage between worlds inhabited by both the living and the supernatural. Major Romanov made a fateful decision. We must reach that place where the barrier between worlds is thinnest in order to understand what is happening here. Stay together, and let no fear overcome you. His voice brimmed with resolve, and though fear lurked in the eyes of his men, they followed him without hesitation. Step by step, they advanced toward the mysterious place where the forest opened into a small clearing, bathed in moonlight. Here, time seemed to slow, and the air was filled with an eerie murmur. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone pillar, entwined with vines and covered with mysterious symbols. This place was the key to understanding the events unfolding before them. Nearby, as if deliberately placed, lay the remnants of ritual objects, bowls, mirrors, and figurines, crafted from an unknown material that shimmered in the moonlight. At that moment, Gromov felt his mind flooded with visions, images of people long gone who had taken part in rituals, twisted figures striving to overcome the barrier between worlds. He was convinced these visions were messages, warnings that the forest did not forgive mistakes. In his eyes flickered fragments of a past where even his own ancestors might have faced similar ordeals. Every image was laden with pain, terror, and the inevitability of fate. Suddenly, from the center of the clearing emerged a deep, almost hypnotic voice. "Welcome, brave souls. You have crossed the threshold, and now you must confront the truth hidden beyond the veil of worlds. There is no place here for the weak. Only true seekers can embrace the light of knowledge or be forever consumed by darkness." The voice penetrated to the very depths of their souls, leaving behind only a cold echo. Their hearts pounded faster as they sensed unseen forces gathering around them, as if preparing for an invisible battle. Romanov ordered everyone to take defensive positions around the stone pillar, seeking any measure of protection from the impending, indescribable threat. Every moment in this place could be their last, and all understood that their fates were now intertwined with this ancient site, a place where time and space danced an unimaginable waltz of light and darkness. At the moment when the tension reached its zenith, the forest stirred with such intensity that it seemed nature itself was revolting against the violation of its laws. From deep within the earth, narrow streams of dark energy rose, wrapping themselves around the stone pillar and penetrating the hearts of all present. The voices of ancestors and ancient spirits filled the air, merging with the cold wind and the whisper of the leaves. Even Sokolov, still clutching the amulet, felt an unfamiliar energy seize his body. Time seemed to stretch out, and visions of distant epochs filled his mind, visions of ancient tribes performing rituals in honor of the forces of nature. He saw men and women, clad in animal skins and adorned with primitive ornaments, standing in a circle with their hands raised to the sky, calling upon the gods for aid. These images were full of reverence and terror alike, a reminder that any attempt to interfere with the natural order could lead to catastrophe. Meanwhile, Romanov, gritting his teeth in an effort to maintain control, found it increasingly difficult to deny that the forces now awakened surpassed anything he had ever known. We cannot turn away from this power, he thought grimly, or we shall remain prisoners of its curse forever. His words, filled with both sorrow and resolve, echoed into the night, merging with the ancient incantations that rose in unison with the heartbeat of the earth. The amulet in Sokolov's hand began to radiate a brilliant, almost blinding light. With each pulsation, the very air around them thickened, and space itself seemed to warp, as if someone were beginning to inscribe invisible patterns upon it. The light from the amulet gradually changed color, from a cold blue to a sinister red, with every new hue promising an inevitable retribution for the laws that had been broken. From the center of the clearing, a shadow emerged, a vast, nearly tangible darkness, as though the very embodiment of night had taken form. It advanced slowly but inexorably toward the border guards, each step resonating with echoes from a time when the world was young and nature's laws were both severe and immutable. The shadow's voice, low and thunderous, intoned, "You have dared disturb the peace of the ancestors, and now you shall pay the price." Every word seeped into their beings, as if life itself were beginning to fade from their bodies. Gromov, summoning all his resolve, attempted to deflect the attack of these unseen forces. "We are not here to offer sacrifices," he cried out. "We are guardians of order and peace. We call upon you, return balance to our world." His challenge resounded across the clearing like a battle cry, directed at the ancient darkness. Yet the answer came swiftly and mercilessly. The shadow drew so near that one could distinguish its twisted features, distorted faces, lifeless eyes, and hands stretched out in a dreadful gesture, as if pleading for help or meting out punishment, at the moment when it seemed that the forces of light and darkness were about to clash in an inevitable confrontation. The border guards felt that the forest itself had become a battleground for an ancient struggle. Every dewdrop, every branch, every leaf bore silent witness to a conflict that had raged through the ages, a battle between ancient rituals and the unyielding will of the ancestors. Seeing that normal orders and discipline could not stave off the impending doom, Romanov was forced to call upon the very traditions his father had taught him, age-old customs passed down through generations. He recalled the old words of his childhood. Within every human heart burns a flame capable of dispelling darkness. Only true faith and courage can conquer the curse of time. With these words, he retrieved from his pocket a small amulet, a gift from his mother, and clutched it tightly as he exclaimed, "Spirit of the ancestors, hear our call and grant us the strength to protect our world from destruction." In that instant, the air around them filled with golden sparks, as if the universe itself were responding to his plea. The forces of light, gathered in those ancient artifacts, began to break through the darkness like the first rays of dawn shattering the night's gloom. The shadow, weakened by this sudden burst of brilliance, groaned as its edges began to blur, dissolving like water streaming off a stone. The struggle was not merely physical. It was a battle of spirits. Every guard felt their very soul tested, a struggle between fear and hope, between despair and the belief in a brighter future. Ivan Sokolov, holding the amulet, sensed his fear giving way to determination. Closing his eyes, he remembered all of his grandfather's tales of heroic deeds and of faith that could overcome any obstacle. When he reopened his eyes, he saw that the amulet now glowed with a soft blue radiance, a light that seemed capable of reaching even the darkest corners of the forest. Together, Romanov and his comrades, driven by duty and the ancient wisdom passed down to them, began to chant the old incantations, words that appeared to rise from the very depths of their souls. These chants, imbued with the power of their ancestors, resonated like the call of ancient spirits, calming the forest and restoring balance between the worlds. Each uttered word echoed powerfully, confirming its authority over the circumstances that had been thrust upon them. Suddenly, the forest shuddered, and time seemed to pause for a heartbeat. It was as if every event, every trial and hope merged into one singular moment when light and darkness clashed. The stone pillar at the center of the clearing, the source of the mysterious rituals, began to shine with an almost blinding light that illuminated the entire area like a beacon. The shadow, unable to withstand the brilliance, began to recede, disintegrating into fine particles that dissolved into the night air. At last, the forest seemed to reclaim its ancient silence, now imbued with the sense of purification and renewal. The border guards, feeling that the ordeal was over, exchanged looks that revealed not only exhaustion, but also a deep understanding of the events they had survived. They knew that that fateful night would forever leave its mark on their hearts, and the lessons learned in their confrontation with otherworldly forces would accompany them throughout their lives. When the first rays of dawn cut through the darkness, the weary and drained border guards emerged from the forest. They understood that what they had experienced was not merely a brush with the inexplicable, but a sign that the boundaries between worlds were always delicate, and that one should not cross them without due necessity. Each of them returned to their duties with a newfound understanding of the nature of reality, realizing that the world around them was filled with more mysteries than one could ever imagine. Major Romanov, glancing back at the dark memories of that night, quietly murmured, "We are the guardians of not only the border between nations, but also the boundary between worlds. Let this night serve as a reminder that our mission is to preserve the balance, even if it means confronting the most ancient and powerful forces. His words rang out like a solemn oath, a promise made to himself and to the world that no darkness could ever extinguish the light, as long as faith burned in the hearts of men. Each border guard carried within them a fragment of that mystical experience. Even Sokolov, who had once trembled at the mere thought of the unknown, now viewed the world with a deeper understanding. He had learned that even in the bleakest places, one could find a spark of light strong enough to fend off the darkness. His amulet, now softly glowing with a bluish radiance, became for him a symbol of hope and inner strength, a constant reminder that every trial is but a temporary obstacle on the path to truth. In the weeks that followed, life at the border gradually returned to its routine, yet none of the guards ever forgot that night. They continued to patrol the forest, aware that it was not only a place of natural beauty, but also a keeper of ancient secrets, secrets capable of stirring both the deepest fears and the most profound hopes. The forest had ceased to be a location for routine checks. It had become a living entity speaking in a language of symbols and age-old legends, audible only in the silent depths of night. Over time, the legend of that night spread among the border guards. The new recruits listened with reverence to the tales of their seniors, and the stories of the shadow cutting across the night sky, and of the ancient stone pillar glowing with mysterious light, turned into parables passed down through generations. In the hearts of all who had ever set foot near that forest, the understanding took root that the boundary between worlds is not merely measured in kilometers. It stretches deep into the very soul, and one day you might have to decide on which side you will stand. The threshold of a new dawn, the story of that night when the forest came alive and revealed its ancient secrets, became a symbol for all those daring enough to venture into the unknown. The border guards who had survived that mystical experience continued to carry the light of knowledge into the darkest corners of the world, reminding everyone that fear can be overcome when the flame of courage burns within the heart. Every time they passed through the forest, they recalled the sinister shadows, the whispering voices of ancient spirits, and the fact that even a single, resolute cry in the dark can awaken powers capable of altering the course of history. Remember this: always be prepared for the moment when darkness might try to claim your light. And if you ever find yourself standing at the crossroads between worlds, do not be afraid to take that step forward. For beyond the mundane lies a truth that can illuminate even the gloomiest recesses of our souls. We hope this mystical saga has stirred within you an interest in the secrets and unexplored realms that surround us. If you enjoyed the tale, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Who knows? Perhaps your voice will help open a new chapter in this endless story, where the boundaries between worlds fade, and light and darkness merge into one.